Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the American Scouser podcast, one of our instant reaction podcasts after the Merseyside derby against Everton. I have Debrai and Hilary with me today. Um, Welcome. How are you guys doing after this game?
Wonderful.
I'm okay.
Okay. Well, we're all alive. We're still in there. So, um, let's go real quick reaction first in terms of what you guys thought of the starting lineup, and then we'll kind of go along the game and see where we ended up with, and hopefully finish with looking ahead in terms of where we're at now. With, I mean, there's still 9 weeks to go, but no need to press the panic button yet. But it's getting close. You might want to lift a finger, but still, we'll get there. So, Debray, what did you think of the lineup when that's first showed up on the screen?
um, my thought was that I would have liked to have maybe seen uh, somebody a little bit more creative in the midfield against a team like Everton. Maybe Keita, maybe Shaqiri, something a little bit more positive. Maybe even Milner. I think he's got a little bit more of a creative element than Henderson. That said, other than that, the lineup was not a surprise to me, and I don't want to make it clear. I don't believe the lineup impacted the outcome. We'll get into it, and I think there are other reasons for that. But that's my instant reaction in terms of the lineup.
What did you think, Hillary?
I pretty much agree. I think that I was not surprised by anyone in the starting 11. And I was maybe a little bit disappointed Keita wasn't there. I thought that if he's not ill, if he's recovered from whatever illness he had had, that he should have probably had a starting place. But I had complete faith in that lineup. I thought Henderson had kind of proved himself in the last he's been playing really well, and Origi was great in that last game. So I was excited to see it actually.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of like a lineup I think I projected when we were talking before the game. I figured, Miller will be rested after playing that game, and Henderson is like the natural person. And honestly, really, out of that starting lineup, I agree with Debray. I mean, you could not pick one single person and said, "Oh, if this was different." I mean, it's pretty clear that Klopp does not trust Keita and Shaq in there as much. I mean, does this pretty much say that he does not have as much trust in them in terms of keeping their positional discipline?
That's a good question. It's hard to speculate because he's included Keita in games that I didn't think he would include him, and he's excluded him in games where I thought, he would be a natural fit. So I really don't have that one worked out. And I think that they're two different cases, Keita and Shakiri. Shakiri, um, his form of late hasn't been great, but he's a person who scored important goals. And what I like about him is that he's cocky. He has this sense of arrogance about him um, that I think would have been useful in a game like this. And but clearly there are things about him that he doesn't like, and it's probably what you're alluding to is maybe on the defensive side of the game, which has really been paramount this year. Maybe that trust is not there as the season is winding down, and the pressure and the pressure is heating up.
What do you think, Hillary? I mean, I know everybody's they got to get more games and stuff, especially for Lakaita. But I mean, is it becoming more and more clear now that for one reason or another he's sticking with the basic core and rotating, Wijnaldum and Milner and Henderson in there with Fab now?
Yeah, I mean we're not privy to what's going on in training. We don't know um, what the plans have been and how they've been there. But I also think that um, yeah, I think that they haven't maybe proved themselves completely to be as dependable as some of those other players, like the ones who started today. I think this was the first time that I had seen a poor performance from Genie, for example, because he's just been pretty consistently great since October or November. And so, yeah, I think that it's just a question of, um, what's been going on in training and what they've been planning for. And I think that when something like Bobby's injury comes up, and there's no guarantee how things are going to kind of work out in the front, I think that he's got to rely on those like the players in the midfield that he knows he can depend on.
Yeah, because I mean, in all honesty, I mean, most people were criticizing that they didn't see Keita or like Shaq, kind of like Debrai, like would like to see somebody maybe a bit more offensive minded in there. But let's face it, the last person we would have thought of taking out of that lineup to make room for those guys would be Genie. And like Hiller said, I agree that I mean, for one reason or another, he was just not himself today. He was just, I thought he was probably the poorest out of the midfields. He did not look as strong. Sometimes it almost looked like he looked lost, like almost like a few seconds behind the situation, kind of like chasing the ball as opposed to being proactive. For one reason or the other, he was not, you know, his usual self today, and he would be the first one to be penciled in right now, and deservedly so because he's played well all year.
Yeah, I think that that's right. I agree with both of you guys in terms of Genie. He just wasn't himself today, despite the consistency he's shown throughout the year. Um, speaking of midfielders, and I'm not an anti-Henderson guy, um, but I'm not necessarily one who thinks he's the most creative player either. I think he does a job. He normally does it well. I thought he played well today. I thought he created some chances out of the back today. And, to go back to the points that we're all making at the outset of this call, at the outset of this podcast, you know, this was a team that should have beaten Everton today. This was a team that created enough chances to win the game 2-0, 3-0. And so we can dissect the game in terms of the lineup, the
Mm-hmm.
tactics, the substitutions. But to me, the headline from this game is a lost opportunity as a result of inability to convert the many opportunities that presented themselves throughout the match, including some gilt-edged opportunities by our talisman, Mo Salah.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree, and actually that was a point that I definitely wanted to make was I see no issue with the players that were on the field except for my biggest thing was I sent a screen cap of it to Tim, like Mo had the perfect opportunity to score a goal and he just didn't convert it. And I think that this should have been a win. And if I had to pick out anyone for a poor performance or the reason why we lost, it would just be, the front and him not making that opportunity happen.
Yeah, I mean, he had at least two very clear chances, and one that he created where he could at least like crank the shot out. But yeah, I mean, those two, it almost looked like in a regular game, Salah would have had a hat trick today. Really, I mean, it just looked like that. But so, I mean, I have my own opinion on this. But what do you guys think is the reason? Is it just out of form? Because I mean, to me, it was kind of like around the field. They seemed nervous, and I think this is the first time City playing before us kind of hurt us. Because I felt like everybody was kind of pressing a bit. Like that's why every pass was like a little off, and even those shots, like like with Salah, like is either everybody trying to do too much or everybody kind of like overthinking what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that that's right. And I don't know. It's hard to get into the heads of players in terms of their psychological state. I thought they started the game fairly well. Um, I think the problem was they didn't convert one of those early chances. I think they convert one of those early chances. Everyone kind of calms down a little bit. They think more positively and play more on instinct and rhythm rather than, as you said, forcing things. There was one chance. This was not the easiest chance by any stretch of the imagination, where Mo had the ball at the edge of the box. He made a great move to get past his defender. He put it on his left foot, and normally, what I've seen from him in those situations is he almost cushions the ball to the far corner. And this time, you could tell he was trying to apply more power. And with the application of more power, he lost the accuracy and then end up going right at the goalkeeper. How many times did we see Mo last year score a goal in that position? I think that's just an example of players are just pressing a little too hard. And the longer it goes 0-0, the more you think to yourself, oh my God, what if we lose? What if we don't win? And, we've all probably played the game at different levels. Obviously, no, nowhere near Premier League level. But, we've been in those games where you feel like, gee, maybe today's not going to be my day. And once you get that negative thought stream in your head, um, it's infectious. It starts to impact other players, and it can be really debilitating. And I think that's my takeaway from today more than anything to do with tactics. And I know the substitutions were questionable, but I just think throughout the team there was just an increasing nervousness as the game progressed. And they reached a point where I thought to myself, we're just not going to score today. And yeah, so I think that was really it more than anything we could break down from a technical perspective.
So where do you put the results then, Hillary? I mean, obviously not what we want, and like I say, I felt like the City game really kind of hurt us. I wish it was at the same time. I almost feel like if it was at the same time, we're scoring some of these goals, or we're definitely playing a lot better. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm I think coming away from this game, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because I thought that after the last game, it was going to be similar to what happened to us in December where we just built off of that momentum and we would be able to kind of go into this month with kind of finding that identity. I know on the last pod that I was on, Debrai, you talked about that, like being able to rediscover the identity and
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. And I really felt like this was that opportunity to keep that going. And so I think that that will be the one thing that is still going to have question marks above the teams and the team sheets and the players in the games to come this month because they've lost that. Um, Whether it's just the fans feeling it or they feel it too, that momentum. But I think that City also has a really tough month ahead of them. And, they didn't do so well last time when we were right behind them and they kept having to look over their shoulder. And they've shown that they can make those mistakes and people and teams are capable of taking advantage of it. So I think that there's nothing to be like you said, not to have your finger over the panic button yet, because I think that this month is really still gonna gonna it's that first spot is still gonna be up for grabs. And so it's really just that our team being able to come back and get back in that right headspace.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's, someone from the front starting it or the midfield kind of beginning to get more creative or actually taking some risks and getting some bangers or something. Well, we've seen some of them do in the past. Um, but I just think that it's got to be that, the spark gets lit somewhere and I think it'll catch.
Yeah, my hope was to. I think we all felt the same way. I mean, the way that Watford game went, it almost was like, there we go, the floodgates are open, kind of thing, and guess not. But I feel like and this is like I know if you guys have been online after the game looking around, and if you guys have a heart condition, don't. Is some of the fans' reactions just kill me. Because you're looking at City, so they're winning 1-0. So when we were winning these games by a goal, some of these fans were not happy because how come we didn't do this, we didn't do that, we got to play more offensive, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. But City's, that's 2 games in a row now where they kind of like squeaked in the 3 points. But suddenly, in most fans' eyes, they're invincible. They're going to win the rest of the way. out and the title was over today. That overreaction and the hypocrisy just kills me. I mean, you can't have it both ways. And there's no way your team is going to win every game 5-0. This is not FIFA at the lowest level. I mean,
Right.
this is, Premier League at the top level. That just inconsistency just kills me online. And, everybody is like, who's the. And, to me, the biggest thing is, oh, that you're not a fan if you're not supporting the team and stuff. I think, to me personally, everybody has the right to criticize. I mean, we'll talk about the substitutions in a little bit over here, but you can say, oh, so and so should have started, so and so should have come in. We could have done this differently, and that's all good. You can criticize Klopp; he's not God. You can criticize Salah. We just did. So that's all okay. But to me, if you're just suddenly bashing a team, kicking them to the curb 9 weeks ago, which is almost a quarter of the season, to be honest with you. I know it's like single digits, so it feels like it's almost over, but to me that's just being like just a terrible fan, and like you're just like bailing on the team that is only a point behind 9 weeks to go. Uh, it just like drives me nuts. So what was your guys' reaction now that the game is over, looking ahead to 9 weeks, Debray? Like, what is your mindset at?
Well, my mindset is a couple of things. One is I am very confident City are going to drop points. They're not going to win 9 games in a row. They're due for some bad results, actually, especially if they progress in the Champions League, which looks like they're going to. They're going to get fixture congestion. They have a lot of pressure to win the Champions League, to do well in the Champions League. So I'm less worried about there being an opening for us to recover today's result. If I'm more concerned, it's about us. And are we able to um, calm ourselves down and win, whether we win ugly, whether we win beautifully, whether or not we were able of game it is, we're able to find that something extra to be able to pull out the result. That's my concern. And if I'm Klopp, I'm my concern is the game next Sunday against Burnley, and I would everything else it just doesn't matter. And I think that's really sort of my mindset is can we rediscover a consistent winning touch the way we had the first half of the season? Because to be honest with you, today's result was not the worst result of the year in isolation. I thought the result at home against Leicester was worse. I thought the result against West Ham away was worse. Um, I thought our performance overall today was better than in those matches in terms of the chances created. So this result has been coming. I wasn't one of those people who thought the Watford result sort of made it clear that we were past that bad patch because it was Watford at home and we score tons of goals against them every time it seems like. So my mindset is, can we rediscover consistency? And if we can, I believe City will drop the points and we can win the title. If we can't discover that consistency, does it even really matter what City do? I mean, we have to earn the title. It's not going to be handed to us. So that's my mindset.
Where are you at, Hillary?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with most of those points, and I think that the team that we saw today and the previous games, if you compare to how far they've come since last season, they've been really consistent, and I don't think they've with the exception of maybe a few moments or players in the games that you mentioned, Debray, I think that um, they have had a consistent performance since September, and I think that it's really comes down to, like you said, finding that groove to be able to finish and to have the goal scoring, because everything else is has improved and everything else has been more consistent across the board. And that's why we had the result we had today, because the defense was fantastic and the midfield, for the most part did their job and they did it well. And like you said, it's just that rhythm and that extra touch, and getting back into being able to score goals, which I think the hardest part for all of us is that we know that they can do it. and it's just getting back there.
Yeah, because
And so yeah, I think that it's totally possible to do that. Every single one of those players is capable of it. So I'm not worried yet.
well, I'm definitely worried, but that's what I do. I was worried when we were up 4 points. So it's just I feel like there's so much more to go, and I agree. I don't think City is winning out rest of the way. I cannot obviously after this game or after the last couple of games, I should say, cannot confidently say we're gonna win out the rest of the way either. But that's why they play the games, and we have like 9 weeks to go, and we'll see where we go. I just think, when we look back, I agree with Debrai. I don't think, if we lose the title by a couple of points at the end of the year, I don't think we're going to look back on today. I don't think we're going to even look back at Old Trafford. I think we are looking back at that Leicester City game above all and say, that's where we kind of like lost it. Those are points that we should have definitely had. I don't think we're remembering Salah's like one-on-one that he missed today and saying, oh, if he scored that one. I think we're kind of going back to that Leicester City and West Ham games and saying we should have gotten more points out of, we should have gotten more than 2 points out of those games that at the time on paper looked like would be an easy 6 points. Not easy per se, but if the chances were that it were going to result in like 6 points for us.
I think that's right. I mean, I think the good news is that we have 70 points through 28 matches. Um, that's a hell of a haul. So it's not all doom and gloom. We're 1 point behind the most well-funded football team in the history of football. And as Hillary said and reminded us, we have quality players who are capable of going on a run. And I think we have just as much chance of winning out as they do, which is probably not much. But do we have a chance to get 2 more points than them in the next 9 weeks if we play at our best? So my focus is still on us, and we'll see. As you just said, we'll see how it plays out.
So, what
But
did you think of the substitutions, by the way? I mean, I obviously, we're like, oh, we need the goal and stuff like that. And, first Milner coming in, which we discussed kind of like how Genie was not on. So maybe that wasn't that off. But I know definitely Lallana, including myself, and pretty much everybody probably, maybe Lallana even himself, caught it off guard that he was the one coming in to kind of like push us over and like get a goal. Like, what did you guys think of that? Like, Hillary, what was your reaction when you saw like, apart from like thinking of Kazi, what was your reaction in terms of when he showed up?
um, well, the second half of the game I mostly listened to. So when I heard it, I was like, I was just a little bit baffled because I wasn't sure, but um, I remembered to some of the chance when he got subbed on before some of the chances that he had created. Um, and I thought, well, maybe maybe Klopp knows something I don't. I mean, it's kind of like what we said before. Like I just don't understand why Shaq and Keita were not part of any of the substitutions or the lineup at all today. But yeah, it was a little baffling.
What did you think there, Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Hillary. I mean, you're seeing, especially towards the end of the game, the players are really pressing. You can see that there's a lot of tension. When you're tense on the football field, you tend to, um, not think as freely. You don't see the spaces as clearly. You don't make as good decisions. You're less creative. You're more predictable. So you would think in those situations, you have a choice between Keita, Shaqiri, and Lalana. You would think Lalana is going to be a distant third if that's what you're trying to fix, if that's what you're looking at on the field. So I haven't seen anything in Lalana's performances in a couple of years to make me think that was the right decision. Where I've seen plenty of signs, particularly from Shaqiri, to think, you know what, this is the arrogant, you know what, who probably thinks to himself before he's come in, okay, that's right, I'm going to win the match today. He's got that swagger about him, and I kind of felt like Shaqiri was the one really for me that um, the game was calling out for, and I'm perplexed why he wasn't brought in, or at least Keita wasn't brought in, and we had Lalana, who I struggle to find anybody who thinks he was going to create a goal for us or score one himself.
I actually thought it was almost one of those. First of all, I did not see Mane coming out. I mean, when I saw, even when Lallana was coming in, I kind of envisioned either Henderson or Fabinho being replaced. Like maybe one of them like looked tired. I know Fabinho had a couple of like misplaced passes and stuff like that. So I thought that's where the change was going. So when he came in for Mane, I almost felt like, going back to what we were talking about, I think defensively he just did not trust having either one of those two out there. And in Klopp's mind, I almost feel like we just did not definitely want to lose this game. And we kind of put faith in, being able to. We were still creating chances. I mean, we even created chances after Lallana came in, so we were able to create chances. But I think he was worried about Everton was kind of like had a momentum going, and we definitely did not want to lose this game and not get anything out of it. Because if you look at the standings now, we're a point behind. So any loss of points by City, if we win, we go over them. If we're behind by 2 points, I almost feel like, especially with the Hillary's goal differential in play, is it's gonna take him a loss. It almost, and both teams do not lose easily. City easier than us, but it almost puts us 2 games behind with 9 games to go. I mean, I don't know if Klopp is thinking that much into the point system at that time, but I almost
Mm.
felt like he put Lallana in as a safer option because Lallana is gonna work harder than Shaq is defensively. And probably to a certain point, Keita too. Like he's not going to turn the ball over as easily, or he's going to
Yeah.
play it safer in some cases. Because those two guys, kind of like your expectation, what you're talking about, like Shaq is going to come in and say, I'm going to win this game, and try to do something in midfield where he turns the ball over and lets Everton score, catching us in numbers. Whereas you don't see Lallana doing that. You see Lallana hustling, winning the ball, and, trying to exploit the space and stuff, but not going crazy where he's. It was almost, to me, it was a safer bet.
Well, it's a safer bet. That means we're now in second place.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? I mean, I think fortune favors the brave, and that sounds. I know that's a cliche, but I think if you're going to win the title, sometimes you got to roll the dice. And I thought, as I said in the last podcast, maybe we've overcorrected from last year where we were gung ho every match. To me, if that was the decision making, and that's as good of a reason as I can imagine, I just don't agree with that. I mean, plain and simple, I think you're playing what Everton are 10th in the table, something like that. You're the better team. You're fighting for the title. I mean, you got to go for the kill. That's my point of view.
I mean, this is obviously definitely not the reason. It's not like Jurgen is next to me here, but that was kind of like my thought of like that. Well, maybe that was the only way I can think of choosing
Yeah.
Lana to come in over like Ada and Jack. What did you think of that, Hillary? Like, what was your, at least like, what would what would make him otherwise put Lalana in? Were you not seeing something that he is, or?
I mean, I think that it's just all the points that we've made. And isn't Lalana from that area? Like, is he
Is he?
a lifelong Evertonian? Um, I don't remember if that was right or not. But I don't know if there's something going on, like I said in training that we just don't know. There's an element to this lineup that was different, having Origi in there, and just the dynamic was changed a bit, and so I don't we don't know everything, but I do think that this is one of those times where even people who really trust Klopp and who kind of, even when we've failed before, I haven't necessarily always questioned his choices. This is one time where it's like, okay, well, we're all kind of scratching our heads like what is really going on here, because moving forward, I don't want to have another moment like this again, where we're like, why aren't these players getting minutes on the field when there's nothing visibly wrong that we can tell?
Yeah, I mean, it is perplexing at best why, but so I personally feel probably in some ways Burnley is probably one of the worst teams we can get at home after a game like this. I would have preferred a team like, bit more loose in the back, if you will, or like Bournemouth or somebody like that. But so, what is? Let's wrap up with your guys' gut feeling moving forward, especially with the Burnley game and obviously the Champions League game. I know our hearts would want us to rebound and stuff, but what is your guys' head saying in terms of how we react over the next 10 days? Debrai, we'll start with you.
I think that um, this is where Klopp's man management really is going to come to the fore. I do feel the players are under a lot of pressure, and I think that pressure is natural. Most players in their position would feel that pressure. I don't know if there's anybody other than Milner who's won a Premier League title in that team. This is new territory for them, and they are carrying the burden of a very tortured history over the last 29 years. So uh, my gut is telling me um, that the first big task is you have to make sure that the team's attitude is right. We've normally bounced back okay from difficult results, but that's going to be, I think, really key. In terms of the Champions League game, I said this in the last podcast. Um, I'm I'm not that worried about it, and the reason being not so much that I don't think I think that we're definitely going to go through. It's just that it's not our priority this year. Our priority is the Premier League. I think that's the view of most fans. And I almost don't want to get ahead of myself because we've got Burnley coming up. And I think even our mindset going towards that Champions League fixture is going to really depend on what type of team shows up on Sunday. And I will tell you this. Um, I want to see a team that's going to be proactive and be less worried about the opposition and force the opposition to worry more about us. And I think we did create some chances today, but that late sub, the more I'm thinking about it, is really getting on my nerves. And and you know, like we're trying to win the toughest league in the world against a team that is really really good. And I just feel like even if we don't win the title, and I still feel like we have a very good chance to win it, don't get me wrong, but if we're not going to win the title, you know, let's go all out. Let's make sure that we have done everything in our power and we haven't overthought things and we haven't put handcuffs on players. Let's just go all out. We're playing Burnley, not Man City or Barcelona. So I hope that we will go all out, and that's what I hope to see on Sunday.
How about you, Hillary?
Yeah, I
What?
mean, that's what I think every Liverpool fan wants to see, is the team unleash themselves, and kind of let go of those nerves or whatever it is that's been holding some of the you know the goal scoring back. I think that one of the things that we are seeing, uh, like we didn't see as much of, is that really, like any more of the sorry, any more of the like glimpses of that offensive power we had last season. And I just think that I want to see a little bit more of that. I've been saying that all season long, that I just feel like it's been lost, and I think that that's what I want to see in that game is even if we only score one goal, you know, I want to see it. I want to see it like bring the whole team up a level, you know, and get that kind of charged electricity going through everyone. Um, you know, so that we can actually watch a game and enjoy ourselves instead of stressed, you know. But yeah, and then like to kind of make a little bit of a comment to backtrack where I didn't say it earlier. If this season really does come down to goal differential, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Because you know, if we somehow you know keep a steady path and they fall a little bit behind and it is what it is and it comes down to goals, then I it'll that'll just be insane to me. But yeah.
And I think it will come back to haunt us probably, but I agree with Debrai when he was talking about earlier that we might have slightly overreacted and overcompensated for our defensive woes and almost like playing a lot safer now than we used to. I mean, the whole entire style has changed. I mean, there are times where we turn it on and the game compresses back, but I mean, it's definitely we're playing different than last year, and that's probably why we're conceding a lot less goals and everything like that. I mean, all these clean sheets don't just happen because Van Dijk by himself is having a great year, which he was astonishing again today. I mean, he's just like a Superman back there. But I think our style changing kind of is an overreaction in some ways, and not letting these guys as loose. And I think the lineup choices are kind of reflecting that a little bit. I really feel like that's why players like Keita and Shaq are not getting as much playing time, mainly due to them not being as strong defensively. So we'll see if we kind of save the best for last and we unleash that and go all out. I mean, like you say, that's my theory in terms of why Lalana came in. I feel like if this was 2 weeks to go, that's not the substitution that's happening. And if it is, then that's really mind-boggling. But I feel like if there was only 2 weeks left to go and we really needed a goal today with 10 minutes to go in, it's either it's Sturridge coming in, it's Keita coming in or Shaq coming in over Lalana. That's what makes me think that we kind of tried to play it safe and get the control of the game under us and hope that Lalana exploits some space and stuff like that too. But at the end of the day, it didn't happen. We're only a point behind, 9 games to go. And I mean, I feel like, say, my heart obviously says we turn this around. This Burnley game will be a huge test in terms of how this team reacts. I'm almost glad. This is probably the only time I've been glad to see the international break because I think it comes in a good time, regardless of what happens in the Champions League, in terms of like giving us some time to kind of like regroup, maybe get like Ox or somebody back. I know there's the Fulham game in between, which they're kind of in shambles and pretty much done for good now. But I feel like the international break will come in a good time. Ox is already supposed to play for the U23s this week, so maybe we'll get him back. So maybe we'll buy ourselves some time with a Burnley win. But any other tidbits you guys want to throw in before we wrap it up here?
I was gonna mention the Ox thing because I can't wait to see him. I hope we get to see him maybe in that last game of March, the final game. Maybe he's a sub on. Maybe he's that magic that we're missing. I don't know.
Any parting thoughts, Debray?
Just on a positive note, let's give some full respect to our uh, defense. A couple weeks ago, actually, it was last week, when did the podcast prior to the Bayern game, we were concerned about how low we had to go in the depth chart to get some central defenders. But if you look back throughout this calendar year, our defense has played really well. Van Dijk has been outstanding. Matip has been really
Yes.
effective, and he made a great pass for Salah, who should have converted a chance as well. So the base of this team is the defending, whether we like it or not, and they've been doing a great job, and that's why we're still in it. And if we can address some of the things that we discussed today, the title race is still on.
Yep, positive vibes. That's what we need. So let's look ahead. Thank you too for joining me. Give us a follow and a share. We'll always welcome your thoughts here at American Scouser. And up the Reds. 9 weeks. We still got this. You guys all have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.